What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks into what he believes is a routine, friendly interview, only to find himself ambushed on live television by a host with a very different agenda? The answer: a now legendary meltdown, a scramble by security, and a stunned audience left in total silence. But before we dive into this unforgettable confrontation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. What do you think really triggered Colbert's aggressive turn that night? Trust me, you're going to want to catch every second of what went down. It was supposed to be a smooth night on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. The audience was buzzing, the production ran like clockwork, and the night's headline, guest, Academy Award winner Denzel Washington, was about to walk out. Washington had come to promote his latest directorial project, a deeply spiritual drama already generating serious Oscar buzz. But as Colbert delivered his opening monologue, a different tone began to emerge. The jokes hit harder than usual, laced with a sarcastic edge that seemed to jab directly at the themes of Washington's film: redemption, forgiveness, and second chances. The crowd laughed, but there was a tension in the room, an undercurrent suggesting that Colbert's humor had a sharper target. Then Denzel appeared. With his usual quiet dignity, Washington greeted the audience with a warm smile and offered Colbert a firm handshake. But watch closely. Colbert's grip lingered just a little too long. His eyes narrowed slightly. Something was brewing. "Denzel Washington, everybody," Colbert said as they sat down. "Man of faith, acclaimed director, and someone who's never been afraid to speak his mind." Denzel, settling into his chair, expected the usual late-night fare. "Thank you for having me, Stephen. Always a pleasure." "Oh, the pleasure's all mine," Colbert replied. But there was something loaded in the way he said it, something off. Then came the first jab. "Let's talk about this new film of yours. Very serious, very spiritual. Some might say, preachy." The word hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Washington's face stayed composed, but his body shifted subtly, a quiet straightening of the spine. A veteran reading the battlefield. "I wouldn't call it preachy," he said evenly. "It's about human nature, growth, change. People want stories that reflect both our flaws and our potential." Colbert leaned in, smile fixed, but his eyes were sharpening. "Human potential, sure. But isn't it interesting how Hollywood always finds redemption for certain types of characters, while others get written off completely?" He paused. "Your film's protagonist gets a second chance. But what about the people he hurt along the way? Where's their moment of grace?" This wasn't a promotional interview anymore. Washington took a breath. He was being drawn into something deeper. "That's actually part of the story," he said carefully. "Redemption isn't clean. It doesn't erase consequences. It's about acknowledging harm and trying to make amends, when possible." Colbert pounced. "When possible." He repeated the words almost bitter on his tongue. "That's convenient, isn't it? But what if it's not possible? What if the damage is permanent? No going back, no forgiveness. Then what?" The studio was quiet now. This wasn't banter. This was personal. Washington remained composed, but the tension was thick. "That's where faith comes in, Stephen. Not everyone believes in it. And that's fine. But for me, and for this character, there's a belief that no one is beyond redemption, that everyone deserves a chance to rise above their worst moment." Colbert's smile darkened, almost predatory. "Faith. Right. You've been very public about that. Your Christianity, your traditional values." He paused. "So, in your version of faith, Is there room for people who don't fit the traditional mold? Or is redemption only reserved for those who play by a very specific rulebook? The question hit like a slap. And for the first time, Denzel Washington didn't have a ready answer. Washington's mask of professional courtesy cracked, if only slightly. His jaw set firm, and when he spoke, there was unmistakable steel in his voice. My faith teaches that God loves every person, Stephen. Every single one. No matter who they are or how they live. I don't judge anyone. And I don't appreciate the implication that I do. Colbert leaned back, visibly pleased. He had struck a nerve. Oh, I'm not implying anything. I'm asking you directly, he said, his tone almost smug. You've been quite vocal over the years about morality, family values, traditional marriage. So when you talk about redemption and second chances, does that include everyone? Or just people who share your worldview? A tense hush fell over the studio. Even the crew froze, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary and uncomfortable. Washington drew a slow breath, working to hold his composure. Stephen, I came here to talk about a film I believe in. A story with something meaningful to say. If you want a philosophical debate about faith and morality, maybe we can have that off camera. But Colbert wasn't backing off. If anything, the deflection only energized him. No, I think this is exactly the conversation we should be having on camera, he said, his smile thinning. You've used your platform to promote a certain set of values. The audience deserves to know. Do those values leave room for everyone? Or just a select few? Something flickered in Washington's eyes. Warning. Fire. He leaned forward, his voice low and commanding. Let me be clear, Stephen. My faith calls me to love everyone, to treat people with dignity and respect. But what you're doing right now, this isn't about beliefs. It's not about the film. This is you, trying to engineer a gotcha moment. I'm not here for that. Colbert's expression sharpened. A gotcha moment? No, I'm asking a real question about the man behind the message. You've built a career playing heroes, moral leaders. People listen when you speak, so they deserve to know if your values apply to everyone, or just the people you approve of. Washington's patience thinned visibly. You keep saying that as if I've excluded people. But you haven't asked me a single real question. Just vague accusations dressed up as journalism. That's not a conversation. That's character assassination. The studio was silent now, the air thick with tension. Colbert leaned forward, no longer hiding his edge. Okay, you want specifics? Let's talk about your public comments on marriage and family. You've spoken about the importance of traditional family structures. So tell me, do you think non-traditional families are lesser? That children raised by same-sex couples are missing something essential? Washington's expression darkened. I have never said any family is lesser than another. Never. I've never claimed that children raised by loving parents, any loving parents, are missing anything. But you've praised traditional marriage, Colbert pressed. You hold up your own as an ideal. The implication is obvious. No, Washington snapped. The implication is in your head, not my words. I can talk about my life, my marriage, my experience, without that being an attack on anyone else's. But apparently, in your world, personal beliefs are grounds for being labeled a bigot. Colbert leaned back, savoring the rising tension. Personal beliefs become public policy when they come from someone with your reach. You speak at churches, you give interviews. You've become a spokesman for a certain worldview. I've shared my personal experiences, Washington said, his voice rising, the edge unmistakable now. "I've talked about what gives me purpose, what works for my life. I've never told anyone else how to live theirs, and I resent the suggestion that I have." Colbert didn't flinch. "But isn't that exactly what your new film does?" He shot back. "Doesn't it frame redemption through a very specific lens? A particular kind of faith? Isn't it saying this is the only path to salvation?" Washington stood abruptly, his chair rolled backward with a loud scrape, drawing gasps from the foyer. "Audience, that's it. I'm done." Colbert remained seated, but tension radiated from him like heat. "We're in the middle of an interview, Denzel. Surely you can handle a few challenging questions." Washington's voice boomed, no longer needing a microphone. "These aren't challenging questions. They're accusations. You twist my words, create straw men, and tear them down. This isn't journalism. It's not even decent television. It's a hit job." Colbert stood now too, facing him across the desk. "A hit job? I'm asking you to stand by the positions you've taken. If you can't defend them, maybe you shouldn't have taken them in the first place." They stood face to face. The tension was electric. Washington's fists were clenched at his sides, jaw tight. "I can defend every belief I've ever expressed," he said, his voice a dangerous calm. "But I won't be ambushed by someone who came in here with an agenda. You've been gunning for me since I stepped on this stage. Why, Stephen? What's your real issue?" Colbert's TV charm vanished. "You want to know why?" he snapped. "Because I'm tired of celebrities using the language of love and faith to divide people. I'm tired of sermons disguised as compassion, of people claiming to speak for God while marginalizing those who don't fit their narrow definition of righteousness." Washington pointed at him, eyes blazing. "There it is. The real Stephen Colbert. Not the clever host, not the satirist. That's the man who's been sitting across from me this whole time, the one who decided before I even walked out here that I was the villain in his story." The studio erupted into quiet chaos. Producers whispered urgently into headsets. Camera operators hovered uncertainly. The audience sat frozen. Caught between awe and unease, Colbert stepped out from behind the desk, moving toward him. "I decided you were the villain," he said, incredulous. "You built a career preaching moral superiority, lecturing the country about values from your Hollywood perch. You don't know what real people face, what real struggle looks like." Washington's voice cracked like a whip. "Moral superiority?" he snapped. "I grew up in Mount Vernon. My father left when I was 14. I worked my way through college. Everything I have, I earned. And I've used that platform to give people hope. But to you, that makes me a threat." Colbert fired, back, his voice sharp. "Hope? For who? People who look like you, think like you, believe what you believe. What about everyone else? What about the people your traditional values leave behind?" Washington stepped closer, now only feet away. He didn't need to raise his voice to dominate the room. "You don't know me, Stephen. You don't know what I believe, or who I care about. You've built this caricature in your head, a conservative boogeyman you can destroy on air to make yourself look righteous. But that version of me, it doesn't exist." Colbert didn't budge. "I know what you've said. The positions you've taken, the groups you've aligned with. Then you know I've funded literacy programs in underserved communities." Washington shot back. "I've paid for scholarships, for kids from every background. I've supported re-entry programs for formerly incarcerated people. But none of that fits your narrative, does it?" Colbert flushed, his control slipping. "Don't lecture me on charity. Every celebrity writes checks to feel better about themselves. That doesn't erase the damage your public statements cause to the very communities you claim to support." Washington's laugh was short and bitter. "Damage? You want to talk about damage? Look around, Stephen. Look at what you're doing. You invited me here under false pretenses. You've spent the last 20 minutes attacking my character with assumptions and half-truths," Washington said, eyes locked on Colbert. "And now you're standing there like some kind of social justice warrior. But you're not fighting for anyone. You're performing. For your audience." He took a breath. "At least I'm honest about my agenda." Colbert snapped back instantly. "And I'm not hiding behind religion and family values while quietly propping up systems that harm the very people you claim to uplift." Washington's voice thundered, filling the studio without the need for amplification. "Systems that harm people? Name one. Just one system I've supported that oppresses anyone. Be specific, Stephen. Enough with the vague moral outrage." For the first time, Colbert hesitated. His eyes flickered, scrambling for footing. Your political donations. Your associations with certain groups." "My political donations are public record," Washington cut in. "They've gone to Democrats and Republicans, people I believed could serve their communities with integrity. My associations are with charities that help real people, all people, race, religion, sexual orientation. It doesn't matter." He took a step forward. "And you knew that. You ignored it because it didn't fit the story you came here to tell." Colbert's composure began to crack under the pressure. "This isn't about facts. It's about the message you send. When you promote so-called traditional values in a society that's trying to move beyond those limitations." Washington's presence expanded, filling the space between them like a wall. "You mean values like hard work, personal responsibility, respect, loving your family? That's what I talk about. But you've twisted it into something else, haven't you?" Colbert shot back, almost a whisper but dripping with accusation. "Everyone knows what traditional values is code for." Washington didn't blink. "Code for what?" He stepped in, towering now. "Say it. Say what you really think I believe. Stop hiding behind implication and innuendo. Say it out loud, right now. Let the audience hear it." The studio was frozen. No whispers, no rustling. Just the low hum of equipment and an audience suspended in disbelief. Colbert opened his mouth, then closed it, opened again. Nothing came out. Washington seized the moment. "You can't, can you? Because if you said out loud what you've been implying this whole time, people would see how hollow it all is. Your entire argument is built on presumption and spin." Colbert's voice, when it returned, was faint. "I'm trying to hold you accountable." "Accountable for what?" Washington roared. "For having faith, for loving my family, for making films that suggest people can grow, change, redeem themselves. What exactly am I being held accountable for?" Colbert barely managed to whisper. "For the influence you have. For the message you send." Washington's voice softened, but the fire remained. "The message I send is that people matter, that we all have worth, that no one is beyond redemption, that we're more than our worst mistakes. If that offends you, Stephen, if hope offends you, then maybe the problem isn't my message. Maybe it's you." Colbert's voice grew shrill, desperate. "You're twisting my words. You're making this into something it's not." "I'm not twisting anything," Washington interrupted, calm but seething beneath the surface. "I'm asking you to back up your claims, and you can't. You dragged me out here to make me your enemy. But you have nothing. No evidence, no facts. Just bias dressed up as moral high ground. Colbert glanced toward the control booth, then at the audience, as if hoping someone would save him. "We need to go to commercial," he blurted. "No." Washington's voice was resolute. "We're not cutting to commercial. You started this, Stephen. You wanted to have this conversation on camera," Washington said coldly. "So let's finish it on camera." Colbert's face darkened. "This is my show," he snapped, his voice rising. "I decide when we go to commercial." Washington laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "No, Stephen. This stopped being your show the moment you ambushed me, instead of having a real conversation. This became something else entirely, the moment you chose spectacle over substance." Colbert motioned frantically to his producers offstage, but Washington stood his ground, voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "You know what the real tragedy is?" he said. "You had a chance, right here, right now, to have a meaningful dialogue about faith, about values, about how we treat each other in this country. But instead of engaging with ideas, you went after me personally. You didn't challenge beliefs. You tried to assassinate character." "Security!" Colbert barked, his voice cracking. "We need security on set!" The word dropped like a bomb. The tension in the studio became unbearable. Washington stared at him in disbelief. "Security? You're calling security because I asked you to back up your accusations? Because you picked a fight and realized you couldn't finish it?" Two large men in suits began moving toward the stage, but Washington raised a hand, calmly stopping them. "Don't worry," he said, voice now low and deliberate. "I'm leaving. But not because he's throwing me out. I'm walking away. Because this isn't worth my time, or my dignity." He began removing his microphone, each movement controlled, precise. Then he looked back at Colbert, his expression hard but not unkind. "You know what's really sad?" he said quietly. "I used to respect you. I thought you were someone who used humor to challenge people, to make them think. But tonight you showed me you're just another bully with a platform." "Get him out of here," Colbert mumbled to security, but the command landed with a hollow thud. "I'm going," Washington replied. He set the mic down on the chair beside him. Then he turned to the stunned audience, addressing them directly. "I came here to talk about a film I'm proud of. A story about redemption, second chances, hope. Instead, I walked into a smear campaign built on assumptions and prejudice. I hope you'll watch the film anyway. Judge for yourselves what it says." He began walking off stage when Colbert, desperate to reclaim the moment, called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, Denzel Washington. We'll be right back after this break." Washington stopped, turned back one last time. "No, Stephen. There's no we. There's you, alone with your assumptions and your anger. And then there's everyone else, trying to make sense of what just happened." Such words echoed through the silent studio as he exited. Colbert stood motionless, looking like he'd just been hit by a truck. The audience sat frozen. No applause, no laughter. Just stunned silence. The cameras lingered for several seconds, capturing the moment the host realized just how badly he had miscalculated, before finally cutting to black. So, there you have it. The explosive moment when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walked off a late-night set after refusing to be humiliated. What really drove Colbert's hostility that night? Was it a calculated move to generate viral content or something deeper, personal, ideological, maybe even political? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories that reveal what really happens when the cameras stop rolling.